Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So today I'll be doing the Sociology UPSC 2023 optional paper analysis, paper 2. So let's start. Okay, so the first question was highlight the significant features of AR Desai's dialectical perspective to study Indian society. Now here you also know that this perspective is related to Marxist perspective. So how you are going to attempt this question? Now here you will talk about those features of Indian society which could be associated with dialectical perspective. That means where you could write about the Marxian perspective as well. That means you will be studying about the dialectical perspective in relation to the structure of the Indian society. And mind you, they are talking about Indian society, so just don't go to global affairs. Now, what are the things you can highlight over here? So, what you can do here is you can talk about the agrarian structure. Let me tell you the perspective where these things could be connected. You can talk about the class structure. You can, here in fact you can talk about class analysis. That means based on the status, even in Indian society, the classes are segregated. So class analysis. Then you can talk about caste structure. Now caste structure, here also you can talk about what the way the hierarchy of the caste is based, and that is related, that is also associated with the dialectical perspective. How come? See, for example, the big landlords or the large landlords were coming from the upper caste when you study the hierarchy of the caste. So caste structure, class analysis, agrarian structure. You can also talk about how the various social movements are also a part of your or are influenced by the dialectical perspectives. Okay, so I think this much will be enough, and for answering this question. Why? Because this is a 10 marker question, and I think I have given you enough of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you want, you can go with development and dependencies also, like development model also depends upon the dialectical perspectives. Okay, so when you write these points in 150 words, I think it would be sufficient. Okay. Now let's move on to the second part. The second part says that the decade of 1950s was the golden period of village studies. Why do you think that this would be a golden period for village studies in Indian sociology? Explain the statement. Now, if you see the syllabus talks about what? That you have to talk about Indian sociologist in paper 2. So, when they are saying that this period was the golden period, so what you can talk about is that various sociologists came in the way. For example, your M. Srinivas, S.C. Dubey, we're talking about G.S. Khuria, and when they came, they didn't only studied Indian society from one of the perspectives, but multiple perspectives came and multiple methodologies also came here. So what you can do here is you can talk about research, you can talk about different methodologies. Research methodologies, you can also talk about the Indological perspective that was given by J.S. Khuria, and most of the time, though it was a textual view, but he was trying to give a different perspective what Western scholars have given. So you can talk about the Indological perspective. You can talk about M. Srinivas' views. For example, when he talked about the model of Sanskritization, and he was talking about Brahminization, so everything will be covered over here. Yes, M. Srinivas, Sanskritization. He also talked about substantialization of caste. So you can talk about substantialization of caste. Fine. Other than this, Sanskritization, yes, Sanskritization. Then you can talk about A.R. Desai's perspective, because this was one of its own kind. Nobody in Indian society could even think of studying Indian society from Marxian perspective, because Indian society is comprising of many structures. For example, we have caste, we have religion, we have we have our traditional norms, we have our own cultures. So whenever we study Indian society, we study it from these perspectives. But when A.R. Desai came, he came with a very different opinion, and he tried studying Indian society from the Marxian perspective. So what you can do is that you can talk about A.R. Desai as well. So here you can talk about the land reform system also. For example, the land reform system that was brought, that land reform, how that land reform system was in favor, and as well as how A.R. Desai has studied about the association of welfare state, and you can relate welfare state with the land reform measures. Fine. So this could be covered here in the second part. Now let's move on to the next part. The next part says that you need to analyze the difference between the attributional and the interactional approach studying the caste system. So what you need to do is that you need to study, or you need to talk about the difference between the attributional and the interactional approach. Now for that you should know the difference between what is attributional and interactional approach. Now attributional is something that you have derived it, and interactional is something that you are coming to, or you are associating it through interaction. Fine. So how you are going to study this, or how you are going to write about this? See, when it comes to attributional factors, what you can do is you can talk about all the things that are uh, based on your hierarchy based. You can talk about those structures which are given or which are defined by birth. So, caste structure. Fine. So, hierarchy based caste structure, you can talk about historical perspective, you can talk about ritual aspects. You can talk about the perspective of lineage and descent. Based on the caste system. Then when it comes to interactional approach, you can talk about other factors which would influence the pattern, and what are those? For example, you can talk about the concept of modernization, you can talk about the concept of urbanization, how by coming under the influence or through interaction of these things, the caste system is getting influenced. For example, in urban areas, when industrialization came, what happened was that suddenly people started, migrating from rural areas to urban areas, and when they started migrating, what was happening? There was, there was a push and pull factor was being working out, and that led to migration of people, and that increased the footfall onto one place, that increased your what should I say, that increased the occupational activities in the urban area. So what does that lead to? That led to diminishing of caste system, that means lessening of caste, and increase of class structure. Class structure, you can talk about modernization. Modernization was coming from where? Through urbanization. Fine. So modernization, class structure, urbanization. Here you can write about then you can write about globalization. Globalization has also brought shift in your caste system. Now the next part is that are tradition and modernity antithetical to each other? Comment. Now they are asking you for your viewpoints. That means yeah. So firstly you should know what tradition is, what modernity is, and now what you can do here is you can talk about first the functional part, that how these both tradition and modernity will or the integration of. What you can do is first you talk about the integration part, how the hybridization of both will lead to upliftment, or how when both the factors, that is your tradition and modernity, are combined, so they are going to bring in what you can say subsidization, hybridization, integration, subsidization, upliftment, all both of them together will lead to upliftment. So this can be done in synchronous with each other. Fine. Now the next part, what you can do in the next part is that you go ahead with the aspect of what, for example, how the cultural continuity will be affected. See how you are going to do this. When it comes to functional integration part, it says, see, functional integration part, this one, what you can write about functional integration part here is, just a minute. When you talk about the functional integration part, so not necessarily that tradition and modernity, they can coexist together, because if you see the modern day family structure, traditional family structure was more of a joint family structure. But when modern day concept you see in contemporary times, so what is happening, there is nuclear family. So there you can say that though the practice of nuclear family is prevalent, but the social bond or the connectivity of the bond is still lying. That means even though people are migrating from one place to another, the bond with the family stays strong. So that is one thing you can talk about. So here you can talk about what? The strength, just a minute, it has hanged. Yes, so what you can write about here is that even though the structure of family has changed in the modern day concept, and how it has changed from traditional joint to nuclear family. So traditional joint to nuclear family. Now when this is happening, you can say that even though the pattern of the family structure has changed because of migration, because of urbanization, what is happening is, even though people are migrating, even though people are shifting towards nuclear family, but the traditional social bond, or you can say the family bond, still exists back onto that place. So joint family concept exists when it comes to what? Bond, though not physical living. So household has changed. So similarly you can talk about the other factors also. For example, right now even though modernity exists, but we are following our cultural festivals, our traditional festivals, so there is no change over there. Then subsidization, you can talk about that this is a period of globalization. So here you can talk about Amartya Sen. Just a minute. Yeah, here you can talk about, under globalization, you can talk about Amartya Sen. Fine. Now let's move on to the next question. Now you have to talk about what the main features of land reforms in post-independence India. Now you are also aware of land reforms. Land reform is very important with respect to your GS paper 3 and with respect to the sociology optional also. So this is a very direct question. So what you can do here is you can write about all the tenancy reforms. You can also write about technological advancement. You can write about what? Redistribution of land. is so redistribution of land, tenancy reforms, technological advancement. You can also write about the role of states in bringing the land reforms. Redistribution of land, tenancy reforms, technological advancement, yes. Land distribution, yes. Okay, fine. What else you can do is you can bring on to what? The impact on the rural structure based on these land reforms. So, impact on the impact on the rural structure of the society, yes. And why this is important? Because somewhere or other it has led to upliftment of the society. So because of this upliftment, what is going to happen? There will be change in what should I say? Change in the position of the rural people. That means here you can talk about poverty elevation. That because the purpose was this, so that the land could be distributed among the landless. So poverty elevation. Fine. Now let's move on to the next part. The next part says what? Do you agree with the view of Andre Betele that India's village are representative of India's society's basic civilizational values? Present a sociological overview. So firstly you should know about the study of the Andre Betele. What is Andre Betele talking about? So now they are saying that you have to present a sociological overview. So you have to give your viewpoint with respect to what Andre Betele's view about villages. So what you can do over here is, first you can start with respect to giving the viewpoint of Andre Betele with respect to the Indian villages, and this starts with how? For example, you can talk about the concept of cultural continuity. You can also talk about the social hierarchy. See, social hierarchy is always a part of Indian society. So no matter what you do, it shall exist always. So here you can give the Andre Betele's perspective about social hierarchy. Cultural continuity. You can talk about the historical perspective. Fine. So how will this happen? Now see, here you can talk about what? That in social hierarchy there is what? Aspects of caste structure seen. Fine. So these are certain civilizational values. For example, he was of the opinion that India's village represent what? A cultural cohesion. That means they believe that there is cultural continuity. Cultural continuity, or you can say cultural cohesion. So here you can talk about social bonds, human connect. Now, this was the viewpoint of Henri Betele, that India's village are representative of India's society. Why? Because somewhere or other they were representing a close bond among the people. A traditional social hierarchy is present there based upon the caste structure. Initially we were having this Jajmani system, that is also somewhere or other, though it collapsed, but somewhere or other that time it was there. Yes, so this would be the views of Henri Betele. Next, what you can do is that since they are saying that do you agree, that means this was the point where we agreed. If we go critical with the analysis of Henri Betele, so what we are going to say that somewhere or other what was there, that even though cohesion exists, but there was exploitation also. So exploitation based on caste system. So here you can talk about what? You can talk about the concept of globalization. You can talk about the concept of modernization. Since the question is about India's villages, that means somewhere or other modernization and globalization are affecting the villages. And how is that possible? Because you can see the glimpse of it. Why? Because even the remotest of remote village are turning into modern villages. So that is one critical point you can talk about. That can be one perspective. Then you can talk about what? You can talk about social inequalities. They talked in one perspective, you talked about cultural continuity. So here you can talk about what? Disparities, or you can talk about what? Social inequalities. Fine. Now, okay, so this one was anticipated. Now let's move on to the next question. What is that? Just a minute. Yeah. The next question is middle. Just a second. Okay. The middle class in India plays a significant role in country's democracy and development. Sociologists have studied this group extensively and identified several salient features about their roles in India's socio-political landscape. Now, see, what you need to do over here is, first you need to know very appropriately that how middle class is being defined. So based on the sociological perspective, you can go ahead by talking about middle class. Then what you can do is that they say that they play a significant role in country's democracy and development. So how middle class is playing a big role in country's democracy and development? So what you can say is that, see, first democracy perspective mein you can always talk about those voting system, you know, those social organizations, part of being NGOs, civil rights organizations. So you can talk about all of them. Civil rights organizations, NGOs, voting rights. Fine. Now the next thing they say that middle class in India plays a significant democracy and development aspect. What? See, a lot of remittances are coming from the world out there. Then those people who are in the remotest of the remote corner, they are getting educated, and they are also working for the upliftment of that section. So in development aspect, you can talk about not only cultural development or traditional upliftment, and what else? You can talk about modernization, because the maximum effort or the maximum effect that you see of middle class in the development scenario is modernization, urbanization, then you can talk about remittances aspects, etc. Fine. Now they say, see, remittances ka point, what you are going to talk about here, you are not going to write it with respect to the economic terms, you can write it about with the terms with respect to class upliftment, because now in modern day society, though caste, I am not saying that it has diminished or it has been completely eliminated, it very well exists here, and in coming times also it will exist. But the point is that if you want to counter caste, you have to develop a class, and that class factor has led to development aspect. Now, sociologists have studied this group extensively and identified salient features and the roles in India in the socio-political landscape. So now here you can give examples of Amartya Sen you can give. Then here you can talk about M.N. Srinivas has already talked about Sanskritization, so you can talk about that. You can talk about Westernization. Then you can also talk about the glass ceilings, in which people were living, and that broke, and finally a middle class emerged. Fine. So you can give various perspectives. Now let's move on to the next part of the question. Then the part it says, see, I have given you the viewpoints. Now what you can do is that you can add on scholars wherever you feel necessary, and whichever sociologist you feel is good enough. For example, if you want, you can quote Karl Marx also, because he was the one who talked about class. He was the one who gave this historical materialism perspective, so you can talk about that also. Now analyze the role of market and modern forces in understanding the changing trends in the marriage system in India. Now the question is very straightforward. So there are multiple factors that influence the marriage systems in India, and it is talking about the role of market and modern forces. So what is happening is, so role of market and modern forces in understanding the marriage system in India. So what are those modern forces? Now see, initially what happened was that firstly India was more of a traditional society, so we went for arranged marriages. Now there is a change in the concepts of the marriages. Why? Because now people are considering compatibility. Compatibility factors, people are considering what economic aspect, people are considering globalization factors. Why? Because now the world has become a small place, traveling has become easy, people are migrating, and most of the migration is happening from India. So India is one of the country which has this large migration of people to the foreign world. So globalization, economic aspect, compatibility factors, family structure. That means some people won't be preferring large families or traditional joint families. Fine. You can talk about all these modern forces. Now what about the role of market? Role of market, you can highlight the occupational aspect. That means it depends upon the occupation. Here you can write about various case studies. That means case studies with respect to people who are employed at upper division and then marrying at the same level. So marriage that is happening between similar class, that is there, that is also a role of market there. Other than that, you can talk about modern values. For example, women are equally, participating in labor force. So when the labor force participation there, women are participating, so the now role shifts. And what is that role? Caring of the house, all that, the role is being divided equally between the partners or between the spouse. So here you can talk about that also. That means increase in the labor force participation of the woman. Now contextualize Louis Dumont's concept of binary opposition with reference to caste system in India. So what you need to talk about here is Louis Dumont's perspective with respect to binary oppositions. Now you also know that Louis Dumont gave the theory of pure and impure. So it's a very straightforward question. If you are having your notes ready with respect to Louis Dumont, so you can write about it. There is nothing much to discuss in this question. Very straightforward question about purity and pollution. Now when it comes to purity and pollution, see, you can write about here. That means the practice of endogamy. You can also talk about the practice of anuloma, pratiloma marriages. You can talk about the various resistance movements against the change. So resistance against, movement against the resistance. Movement against resistance. Fine. So based on this, you can this pure and impurity and impurity factor. You can talk about occupational hierarchy, etc. Multiple things are there. Like this is a very static question, so a very static answer is there. Fine. Let's move on to the next part. Again, the concept of descent and alliance. Differentiate between northern India and southern India kinship system with examples. Very static question, static answer is there. What is descent? Descent means that you are coming from a family, a group. So that is what a descent is. Alliance is that is the kind of matrimonial alliances you are having. So alliance is different. Matrimonial alliances, or you can say the marriage happening fine. Now they say differentiate between northern India and southern India kinship system. So here you can talk about patrilineal descent, patrilineal descent, matrilineal descent. You can talk about here. Similarly, see, in India we are having in North India what we are having is more of patriarchal aspect. That means the lineage or the descent is coming through patrilineal descent. That means from father to son, son to son, son to son. So you can talk about that in North India, and when it comes to southern India, you can talk about matrilineal system. Yes, because in some places over there that exists too. So that could be there. Now endogamy, marriages within the same caste, etc. Everything could be written over here. A lot of data over present. Fine. Example mein what you can talk about is you can give examples with respect to gotra, marriages within the same gotra not happening, so that's not allowed. Then you can talk about the caste of Nairs in Kerala. Okay, so in example parts you can write this. Then yeah, Gotra, clan, etc. everything. Gotra ho gaya, clan, yeah. Patrilineal clan. Fine, now let's move on to the next question. The next question says, critically examine the concept of Sanskritization with suitable illustration. Now, Sanskritization is talking about what? Social mobility. And this is with respect to what? If you have to achieve, or if you want to be counted within a certain caste, or you need to be respected, what is this concept of Sanskritization came, where the lower caste people were following the practices of the upper caste so that they could be respected the way the upper caste were respected. So yes, you can talk about this. You can talk about the illustrations with respect to this factor, that they were changing their practices. What are those practices? For example, they were talking about the role of religion, that means religious practices. Were changed, influenced, etc. Fine. So in this question you have to write about this Sanskritization. Then you can talk about the various movements also. For example, the Bhakti movement. And Bhakti movement was what? Bhakti movement was the practice of medieval India. So what did they do? Now in this, the traditional hierarchy that was existing, so the people who are coming from the lower caste or traditional lower caste, they were worshipping, or they were performing this bhakti so that they could be counted with respect to the upper caste people. Fine. So you can write about Bhakti movement. You can also talk about B.R. Ambedkar's perspective. And why? Because B.R. Ambedkar was the one who was very much influenced by Buddhism. So the one who was very influenced by Buddhism, what is happening? You can say the practice of Sanskritization was there. Fine. So this was there. Now let's move on to the next question. Analyze the perspectives of isolation, assimilation and integration in understanding the trajectories of Indian tribal development. Now what you can do here is you can talk about what isolation means, what assimilation means and what integration means separately. So what is isolation? Isolation is what? In order to preserve the distinct identity, you can say tribals followed the policy of isolation, or you can say we went for the policy of isolation. Why? Because we didn't wanted to interfere in their distinct cultural qualities, you can say. So in order to have no interference. Now when it comes to assimilation factor, what do you mean by that? Assimilation means that you are trying to integrate them into mainstream society, and this is happening how? Through following what? The concepts of, or through you can say using what? Using the values and norms of the dominant caste. So you are very much trying to assimilate them, but see here you can say there is intermixing of caste, intermixing of culture values that is going to happen with respect to the dominant caste. So intermixing is there. When it comes to integration, integration means that it advocates what? Inclusion. Inclusion is there, inclusion of the tribal communities is there, but at the same time the cultural distinctiveness factor is also respected. So you can say yeah, integration is there, but cultural distinctiveness factor is respected. Fine. Now once the differences is clear, what you can do here is, now you can understand what, how the Indian tribal development has taken place. For example, we went with isolation, we went with assimilation, we went with integration, so that their cultural distinctiveness could be preserved, and at the same time you can say that we try to empower them through reservation, etc. So empowerment process was also done. And here what you can talk about is Nehruji's Panchsheel principles. You can also talk about G.S. Ghuria's perspective, that G.S. Ghuria never thought that tribals were ever kept as culturally distinct from or they were never a part of mainstream society. J.S. Ghuria was never of the opinion, so you can talk about that opinion also. J.S. Ghuria's perspective, Nehruji's Panchsheel principles regarding tribals, where he has talked about how they could be brought into the mainstream society. Explain the implications and impact of globalization in situating the changing agrarian class structure in India. So first you should know what is globalization. You can talk about globalization. Then they say that you need to explain the implications and impact of globalization in situating the changing agrarian class structure. Now see, initially the agrarian class structure was facing a lot of depression regarding what? The land holdings, traditional land rights. You can say, you can talk about the middle person, and if you want to talk about the time of British era, you can talk about zamindari system, mahalwari system, rayatwari system, all that. Now with globalization, what is happening? There is a change. That means land redistribution happened. Fine. Next thing, modern technologies came. Now the class structure is not only influenced by agrarian factor only. Why? Because even the rural sector has shifted from traditional rural agrarian economy to more of education and technology section, or you can say education and research section. So that could be talked about. Then you can talk about migration and urbanization. Fine. All these factors are impacting the agrarian class structure. You can here talk about Lenin's framework. Lenin's framework. You can also talk about the land reform system. Now, when land reform system was brought, you can talk about AR Desai's concepts over here. Fine. Now, let's move on to the next question. The next question says that critique the victory narrative of Green Revolution in context of Indian society. That means you have to critically analyze the achievements or the narratives of the Green Revolution. So, Green Revolution had a positive effect, but in certain states, and especially in the states where farmers were having large land holdings. So, when it comes to being critical to it, what you can talk about here is you can write about the socio-economic inequalities. You can also talk about why socio-economic inequalities, because I just told you that land holdings of the farmers was different from were different with respect to different states. For example, when you talk about the farmers of the UP and Bihar, there is difference with respect to the farmers that land holdings of the farmers in the areas of Haryana and Punjab. So you can talk about socio-economic disparities. Then you can talk about monoculture. Monoculture with respect to what? Your crop diversification. Now, how was Green Revolution impacting certain crops, and the change was not significant with respect to the all crops. So, monoculture, crop diversification. You can talk about how environment and soil factor also played a key role with respect to Green Revolution. Environmental and soil factors played a key role with respect to the Green Revolution. Modern technologies also impacted the output of Green Revolution. Other than that, you can talk about traditional farming practices. You can also talk about food security. Why? See, food security in Green Revolution has brought a lot of changes. Why? Because a lot of food accessibility increased. There was a lot of distribution of food. Then what happened was that implication parts, when you have to write the implication part, you can see right now also there's a lot of population in India which is under BPL. So if we have achieved food security, then this practice or this shouldn't be there in the country. But then we are experiencing what? Malnutrition, we are experiencing this poverty. We are also witness to a lot of gaps with respect to the income equality. So all that can be mentioned over here. Fine. Now let's move on to the next question. The next question says that citing some case studies, expand the concept of development induced displacement. Now, development induced displacement, what does this mean? For all those who are new to the subject, you will get to know you will be doing when you will be studying, and for all those who know or who have read the subject will definitely be knowing that wherever the development activities are happening, what happens is that for those activities to occur, we have to get that area, cleaned. So people are migrating from those areas. Why? Because any kind of development activity happens, that activity is happening when we have to shift people from there, because we require a large section or a large holding of land. So what you need to do here is, see, you can talk about, they are asking you case studies, you can talk about Narmada River project. You can, Narmada River project, you can talk about the dam projects, other dam projects. You can talk about the Beeskund project. You can talk about the metro rail project. You can also talk about hashtag Save Raika. That was, Raika forest was cleaned for what? So that another development activities could take place in this forest. So you can talk about hashtag Raika forest, Save Raika forest, Save Raika. Fine. Apart from this, you can talk about we had the Statue of Unity. So Statue of Unity, because the statue was formed of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel for what? So that there could be increase in tourism section, but then that led to displacement also. These multiple projects could be written, not a big deal. Now since they haven't asked you specific to Indian scenario, you can go global also. So you can write about Three Gorges Dam of China also. Yeah, that would be great. Three Gorges Dam of China. Fine. Now let's move on to the next one. Examine the concept of cultural pluralism in the context of India's unity in diversity. So, concept of cultural pluralism. What is cultural pluralism? The word itself talks about existence of multiple culture together. You can say multiple culture in harmony. Yeah. So existence of multiple cultures in harmony, and what will that lead to? Now we all are aware of the fact that we say that India is unity in diversity. So this is what cultural pluralism means. That means multiple cultures are existing in harmony with each other. Now they are saying you need to examine the concept of cultural pluralism. So what you can do here is, you can talk about the concept of cultural pluralism with respect to many factors. For example, you can talk about preserving social identity, because if one's culture is there, what happens is that becomes a distinct part of person's personality. So preserving social identity, that acts as a key role in preserving what? Social distinctness. That brings in social distinctness. Fine. Then you can say what, as the modernization and urbanization is increasing, what is happening is somewhere or other we might become aloof to our own things. So that could be stopped. And how is that possible? Through cultural adaptation. So you can write about all these factors over here. Okay, since wherever there is diversity, there are high chances that you are going to encounter what? You are going to encounter tensions, challenges. So if there is pluralism, and if we have a good understanding, what we can say is that the challenges or tensions could be avoided. Now the next question is highlight the salient features of new education policy. Now see, what you can do is that here this is very current oriented question, but you have to write it through sociological perspective. So you can talk about Karuna Ahmed's report, and what does that talk about? When you talk about Karuna Ahmed's report, you talk about how these foundational learning is very important. So for that you should know about the key features of new education policy, and once you know about the key features of new education policy, that talks about foundational learning, that talks about coding, that talks about giving influence to research section, then increasing the gross enrollment ratio, what we are targeting for. All this could be explained with respect to what this is going to bring a change altogether in the Indian society with respect to what? Reducing the gender gap, with respect to the labor force participation, with respect to education section also, with respect to you can also talk about since this national education policy is there, we can also talk about bringing care economy into the mainstream section or mainstream society. So gender social inclusion, teachers training, professional development, everything could be written in national education policy. Fine. Let's go with the next one. Analyze the social interconnections between social media and mass mobilization in India. So what is social interconnection between sociological interconnections between social media and mass mobilization in India. See, we all are aware of the fact that social media acts as one of the one of the key factors in mass mobilization. So how is this going to happen? See, when you bring social media for mass mobilization, now here the activities of activism takes place. Activism, participation. In some scenario, what is happening is that digital divide affects inclusion. So digital divide affecting inclusion. Okay. And how else mass mobilization could be done? See, right now I have just given you that example of Save Raika. So here you can talk about hashtag movements. Hashtag movement, you can talk about cultural and social identity also, because that also helps in mass mobilization. So cultural and social identity. Fine, let's move on to the next one. Now the next question talks about discuss the nature of regional variations in sex ratio in India, stating reasons. Discuss the nature of regional variations in sex ratio in India. So see, here also if you understand what they are talking about is nature of regional variations in sex ratio. That means that affects or that changes from region to region. Why is this happening? In some cases religious and cultural parameters are playing big role. Why? Because it is considered what that in some scenarios they say that they go for sun meta preference. So when they are going for sun, what is happening is that is varying the sex ratio. So for that matter you can talk about religious and cultural notions. Then in some cases income factor also plays a big role, because the practices of dowry etc are prevalent in our country. So income status also plays a big role, so they might be not wanting to go for a girl child. Then regional and cultural variation, income status. Fine. Other than that, what you can write about is in some cases healthcare facilities are not good in certain areas. Then you can talk about what migration patterns are also affecting it. For example, right now, just 2 or 3 days before, the article was there that people are migrating, that means young population is migrating towards the urban areas. So what is left behind is the rural elderlies. So that is also affecting that section, but if this is one case of gender. Now another scenario is in some cases only men are migrating, so women are left behind in the rural areas to take care of the family. So that is also affecting the sex ratio. Then in some scenarios what happens is that it is expected from one gender to perform certain kind of activity. So in that case also the sex ratio is affected. Then we have this serious issue of sex determination. That also plays a big role in regional variation in sex ratio. Let's move on to the next one. How do you account for the increasing significance of religion in public and personal sphere in context of secularization thesis in India? Now, if you go with the increasing significance of religion, public and personal spheres in context of secularization thesis in India. Now what you can write about, or what you can write here is, you can talk about diversity of religious practices. Now India, just now we have talked about unity and diversity. So when we go or when we talk about religion in public and personal sphere in context of secularization, so here you can write about, see, this brings in what if it is, it has both positive and negative aspect. In name of religion, just now you are seeing the incidents of Israel that is happening. So it is not just a one day thing that has happened today. A lot many factors has influenced this thing from the past to the present time or the present scenario. So one aspect of religion in public life could be that also, if you could relate it. Then the next aspect is religion in public. You can write about it talks about unity, harmony. You can write about the study of Professor Radhakrishnan. So Professor Radhakrishnan, how the disaster in the Asiatic society or the Asian society is able to, we are able to evolve, or we are able to just get through all these things. Why? Because somewhere or other religion is playing a big role in the public sphere. So the practice of harmony exists because of this. Now when it comes to personal sphere, it is guiding factor for your actions. And how can I talk about this thing? For example, this leads to, you know, this leads to a shift, or you can say evolution of individual. And how is this possible? For example, if you see the modern day society, they are moving towards sect and cult. So the practice of sect and cult, and what is these practices of sect and cult telling you about? So here you can write about a religion with respect to sect and cult section. You can talk about what self-evolution. You can give the concept of what self-development. You can talk about I won't say isolation, but I would say self-awareness. All this is playing role in personal sphere. So all this could be written from, you know, you can give the theory of Banbridge, etc. to justify your answer. Fine. Now the next question is, in the face of rising global climatic concern, how do you contextualize the relevance of Chipko movement and its Gandhian tone? So, okay. Now, if you go with environmental concept, or you go with this global climatic concern, what is happening is that global climatic concern, how do you contextualize the relevance of Chipko movement and its Gandhian tone? Okay, so Gandhian tone, you can talk about community participation. You can talk about women participation. So community participation, women participation. You can also talk about communal harmony. You can also with respect to global climatic concern, you can talk about environmental conservation, etc. Fine. Now, when I talk about these movements, now these movements are specially focused with respect to what this is only possible when the cause of non-violence is there. That means community participation, women participation, communal harmony is there when there is non-violence there. Fine. When you are preserving or you are conserving with respect to the Chipko movement, you should not forget that the culture or the practice of totemism also helps in conserving the environment through the process of Chipko movements. Okay, so the next question is, what actionable measures would you suggest to curb the recurrent child labor menace in India? So see, if you go with the layman's term, what is going to happen is community-based participation, then you can talk about upliftment of the backward people, so all that there. Then you can also talk about legal frameworks. For example, we are talking about child labor, yeah. So strengthening of the legal frameworks. In some cases there are atrocities that are happening with child, so strengthening of POCSO Act. Other than that, you can talk about child participation. Why? Because they need to be made aware about things. So child participation, poverty elevation, etc., child friendly policies, everything could be talked about for checking the meanings of child labor India. Here what you can do is that you can include more of case studies. And these case studies can be from any of the regions which you feel is sufficient enough to explain the activities. Fine. This is very generic question, so could be addressed. Now, do you think that the decades of Dalit political mobilization, just a minute. Okay, do you think that the decades of Dalit political mobilization and movements have helped in strengthening India's democracy? Substantiate your arguments with facts. So now they are saying what Dalit political mobilization has strengthened Indian democracy. So yes, what you can talk about is, see, firstly you can talk about what you can talk about the political representation. What is that? The political representation with respect to your Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, Legislative Assembly, Legislative Council, etc. So that political representation. Then you can talk about increase of this section in government services and educational institutions. How? By the process of reservation, etc. So you can talk about those things. Then you can talk about what this has also led to challenging of, or Dalit political mobilization has also challenged the caste hierarchy. Why caste hierarchy? Because even if you mention the Varna system or the occupational based caste system, this political mobilization has made it possible for the Dalit section to not get confined to one section of work, and they are moving to other occupations as well. Other than that, what you can write about here is, you can talk about the social justice and right protection that we have. Talk about social justice and right protection. Social justice, right protection. Has also led to strengthening of India's democracy. Okay, let's move on to the next one. What is reverse migration? Discuss its feature and discuss this feature, causes and consequences in India. Now, reverse migration, see, migration is what? Migration works on push-pull factor. That means the people are migrating from the least developed areas to more developed areas. Why? Because those more developed areas are having more opportunities. So that is acting as a pull factor. Pull factor. And since the least developed areas are having very less of opportunities, or you can say no opportunities, so that is pushing them to go towards these areas. When reverse migration is there, that means exactly opposite is happening. That means people from good influential places are moving towards which area? That is towards the least developed areas. That means influential or high developed areas. towards the fine. So this is the concept of reverse migration. Now features, causes and consequences in India. See, features are what? When people are migrating from urban to rural section, so that could be one feature. Other feature could be what? Now other feature could be your domestic things, like your house is there, or you can family structure is there. So people are migrating because of these factors. So that could be one feature. Other could be your environmental and health concerns. See, that is what exactly happened during COVID times, when people were going back to their own town. Why? Because the most affected area were the urban sector. So that could be one feature. Now the next one, they say that what are the causes? We have Manrega scheme, right? During COVID-19, I think the scheme outperformed. So government policies, if government policies are bringing a lot of change in that section, then why not? Why not? People will migrate there. There will be reverse migration. So one factor is this health and environmental concern. Now you see in Delhi what is there. Every year during winter times there is smog, right? That is smoke plus fog. So what is happening? Because of this health concern, people are migrating, reverse migration is happening. Then you can say government policies, then you can say technological advancement, and more so if you are working towards agriculture what is going to happen, there is a huge scope of what? Advancement. So people could take up that profession also. Now what will be the consequences? You can say that the rural section, which witnessed depression because there was migration from rural to urban area, what is going to happen? There will be a shift, there will be a change. So what is going to happen is, now there will be one consequence for this, that means population balance. That could be one thing, or one consequence would be meet. Then social impact will also be there, more opportunities for rural people. Why? Because these people might create opportunities for rural section. There could be rural infrastructure development. How? Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojna. So you can write all about this. Discuss the phenomena of rural-urban continuum with suitable example. That means you have to focus on the phenomena of rural-urban continuum. Now what is rural-urban continuum? That is, it acknowledges what? A spectrum of human settlement. It acknowledges a lot many factors. One such is human settlement. You can, human settlement. You can talk about other factors. What are those? You can talk about the various interactions that are going to happen between the communities. So change in the human settlement, interaction between the both communities, that is rural and urban sections. Now what is the feature of such community? See, in this, what is going to happen? There will be a social impact. Now here you can discuss about multiple factors, or you can, since they are saying that you have to give examples, so what you can do here is, you can talk about how this strong tourism is happening, or this push given to the tourism sector. So people migrate from these big cities to have a good time, and to the places of rural significance. For example, the towns of hilly areas, then the areas of Uttar Pradesh, etc. Then you can also talk about certain activities for developmental activities. For example, Chhattisgarh, you have Bhilai steel plant. You can talk of Bhilai steel plant. you can you can talk about tourism. Fine. So Village Steel Plant, tourism. You can talk about cities like Mumbai, where you have this culture of poverty. Oscar Lewis, if you remember. You can talk about Oscar Lewis culture of poverty. You can talk about or give the example of Dharavi section. Fine. Explain the linkages between patriarchy and honor killing in India, citing some recent cases. Now, there's nothing much that you see. You also know about patriarchy and you also know about honor killing. So when it comes to examples, so you can talk about all the current affair cases that happened. For example, there was a case that happened in 2021 in the areas of Telangana that you can mention. Then similar was the case that back in 2020 when the couple got married, were coming from the different caste. I mean, the guy was coming from the lower caste, and this case was there of Haryana. So you can mention that. So yeah, here you have to mention about the case studies. So very theoretical part. I mean, if you know about the current aspects, you can write and attempt this question. If not, then it will be a bit tricky, but again, not something which you are not able to write. Discuss the challenges faced by cooperative movements in India. Challenges, okay, measures to strengthen. So what you can talk about here is, you can talk about, see, firstly, awareness factor. You can talk about awareness factor, you can talk about the lack of finances or the social capital. You can talk about a lot of political interference, because that is one of the reasons why, most of the time movements are affected. Okay. Then what you can talk about is participation. Participation gets affected because most of the time one gender is performing the work of household, so like equal participation from each gender is not there. So all these factors could be talked about. Then you can talk about the leadership issue also. So again, this question was easy, could be attempted. Now you have to strengthen, so measures to strengthen the movement, how is that possible? Build the capacity, bring in technology, bring in community participation, increase the awareness, lessen the political interferences, etc. All this will help you in strengthening the movement. The next question is, what is aging? That is, you are biologically, psychologically and socially the process of growing old. So that is aging. This is what they are asking, what is aging. So you can talk about this, that when the person is psychologically, biologically and socially getting older. Now major problems of aged people, again very a very easy question. You can talk about healthcare issues, you can talk about it, right? Just 2-3 days before there was an article that elderly people are suffering from this mental health issues. So mental health should be taken care of. So that you can write about that. Then aging process affects women section more, because right from the very starting they are left dependent. So when they are dependent on children for that matter, or for family, then they are in the most vulnerable state. So they are not able to take care of themselves. So that is one of the problems. Now changing family dynamics, that means most of the the families are shifting towards the nuclear family structure. Again, the elderlies get affected there. Then people are migrating. So in rural section you will find the population of elderly is more. Then there are cases of elderly abuse as well. So don't forget to write about the cases of elderly abuse. So similarly, many things could be written here. This was an easy question that could be attempted. Okay, so Yeah, I'm over with the analysis. Thank you so much.